Bring in more revenue while saving money and differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack vying to win those guests by becoming more environmentally friendly. We will show you how easy it is and how cheap it can be, if not free, and share all the opportunities available. So join us each week as we take another step along the green path. That's one more step to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack. The Green Path podcast is kindly sponsored by Sestonica, the first sustainability recognition for vacation rental homes. What if vacation rental professionals could influence millions of travellers to make their own homes more sustainable? Show the world that you have taken steps to make your vacation rental consume less and get your badge on sestonica.com. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Green Path podcast. There has been discussion in previous episodes about looking into your suppliers. If you're becoming more sustainable, then ideally you're looking to work with like-minded businesses. No point you being sustainable when your suppliers are doing the polluting. I also mentioned in the very first introduction episode of the podcast that the biggest denomination in most currencies is green. Well, today we'll learn about keeping your money green. Like looking at your suppliers, today we'll be looking at your banks. Today we'll be looking at the carbon footprint of your money. Today my guest is Dan Sherrod-Smith from Mother Tree. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Hi, Deborah. I'm great, thanks. Really glad to be here.
And thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. Dan, I'd like to start where I usually start and talk about your own personal journey. How did you start on your journey about sustainability to get you to the point where you started Mother Tree?
I love that question. Yes, so for me, I grew up in South Wales. I was in Swansea in South Wales, which is right by a place called the Gower. It has really beautiful beaches, golden sand, although you might not imagine that for the British coast, but golden sand and really dramatic cliffs. I like to say they're the best beaches in the world. My wife says they're the best beaches in my world because she thinks it's far too cold, which is fair enough. But while I was in a geography lesson when I was about 12 years old, and I first heard about climate change, and I realized within my lifetime, unless we dramatically change, we're going to lose those beaches. And that was the kind of first moment where it really hit home. You know, our planet is going to fundamentally change unless we do something about it. But I didn't know what to do about it then. This was long before the age of Greta. And so sort of went on the traditional path, the university, and got a job. And then when my last company sold, so I was on the founding team of a business called Look After My Bills, which made it really easy for people to switch energy. We automatically switched people's energy. We saved the British public £127 million. We switched 800,000 UK homes. And while we sort of built that up as a startup and scaled it, and then sold, and we were in this pretty comfortable position. And at that point, my wife was pregnant, and I kind of realized, is this what I really want to do? And when my son's born, he's now 2 years old. At some point, he is going to ask me, what did I do when I realized the extent of the climate crisis? And I want to be able to look him in the eye and said I did all I could with the skills that I had. And so I left that comfortable job and started researching what has become Mother Tree. Initially, I just started talking to people, just listening to their experience of how they experience climate change. In their homes, one-to-one, and then in focus groups. And then my wife came up with the idea of something called the Climate Challenge, which was 30 challenges, 30 days, 8 people, enough to sort of share a vegan pizza. And it was a way for people to discover ways to live more sustainably. And, we went vegan for the day, we got rid of single-use plastic, we found out our carbon footprint. And the two actions that really kind of annoyed people, me included, was when we realized what our banks and our pensions were doing with our money. And, the first challenge I did it was completely new for me. And I realized 2% of my pension was going to BP and Shell. 1% was going to tobacco, 1% to weapons. You
don't think about this thing. You put money in the bank and you don't think about what the banks are actually doing with your money.
Exactly. And then it was just as bad for the banks. They're investing in cluster bombs. The big five banks in the UK put 100 billion, 114 billion pounds into oil and gas expansion in 2021. So it's the same story on that side. And I just thought this is something I have to have a shot at doing.
Yeah.
Last year, we launched Mother Tree with what is the UK's first and only money carbon calculator. So just like, you have a lifestyle carbon calculator for our diet and transport, etc. This one focuses exclusively on our banks and pensions. And that's, that was really the kind of beginnings of our journey on Mother Tree.
That's amazing. And it is about your savings and your pension funds, because the bank's taking all of that money and investing it in something. Okay, we'll come back to how Mother Tree works, but there's a story behind the name, or not a story, but there's an explanation. Where did Mother Tree come from?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking that. Not many people do. So the name Mother Tree is, I read a book called Finding the Mother Tree by a brilliant scientist called Susan Simard, Canadian, and she discovered that trees share nutrients, and it completely blew my mind that the trees were communicating. And if one tree was short of a certain type of nutrient, another tree would send those nutrients to that tree. And what she discovered was the biggest trees in the forest, the mother trees, as she termed them, were sharing the most nutrients. They were providing the space for others to thrive. And also in the summer months had the foliage to protect the trees, under their branches. And where we originally thought actually trees are out competing, it's actually not the case. They're really cooperating with each other, certainly in a forest environment. And it just really stayed with me. And so for Mother Tree, our whole ethos is to share and support and to lift the whole community up. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, beautiful explanation. Yeah. So let's say I want to come along and I want to try your calculator. So can you explain, how do you assess the banks? How do you grade the banks? How does it work when I come into your calculator to try it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So how it works, I'll start there and we'll move back to how do we assess. So how it works. So if you put in, the amount you have in a current account, and let's say that's £1,000, and we already know how much assets that bank has for any given year because they report that. And just for this purposes, let's say that bank has £10,000 in assets. So if you got over £1,000 and they have £10,000, you have in effect 10% of that bank's assets. And so we then know the bank's carbon footprint. So this is to answer your first question. So we're looking at the bank's own disclosures. And they disclose them every year. We're also looking at, in terms of where the bank is investing that money. So we're looking at their investments. We're looking at their lending book in terms of where that money is going. So we're able to draw a carbon footprint. We're able to calculate a carbon footprint for each bank.
And this is all public knowledge, right? The information is out there. You're not trying to, guess and figure it out. It's there.
Yeah, exactly. All of our sources are publicly available. We're just drawing them together to make it a clearer view for the consumer.
Yeah.
And then given you have, in this scenario, 10% of that bank, £1,000 in assets over the £10,000 of the bank's assets, we then say, okay, well, then you're responsible for 10% of that bank's carbon footprint. And the reason we say that is because if you withdrew that money from that bank would be in a worse position. Just like if you're a shareholder in that bank, and therefore you have a stake in their game, you are a stakeholder, and therefore you have a responsibility for that carbon footprint.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that there are most banks, I'm assuming, will invest money in fossil fuels or tobacco, or what was the other one that you mentioned?
Weapons.
And factory farming, things like that. And then there are other banks that do something better. Can you explain, what are these other banks doing then? Where are they investing the money?
Absolutely. So at the other end of that sort of spectrum of investment, and what I would say is, the big banks who are investing in those categories also invest in good areas, but they haven't ruled out investment in things like fossil fuels, which I think we need to do. So the banks on the good end of the spectrum, they completely rule out, investment in things like fossil fuel and weapons, etc. What they do is they're investing in things like renewable energy, in clean water, in affordable housing, in community projects. And the really great banks are very transparent about it. So you can see at a street level, where they're investing, which I just think is absolutely marvelous. And then the other type of bank is, of course, a building society. And building societies work slightly differently. They have mortgages on their book instead of investments. And so, really great building societies like Ecology Building Society, what they're doing is they're making sure the housing stock of the UK is actually improving. So it's more energy efficient. Therefore, we're using less fossil fuels to warm that home. And so there's less reliance on the energy.
Yeah. Is Ecology a building society?
Correct, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now let's just be clear though, actually. So the banks that you're looking at are only in the UK for now.
Yes. So we do international work, but it is on a one-off basis. Our real focus is UK. But yeah, we've looked at banks in Denmark, we've looked at banks in Sweden, we just looked at a bank in Canada. So we do international work, but to really build a kind of comprehensive view of a market, it just takes a lot of time. So yeah, our real focus is UK for now.
And I suppose what you're saying is by taking your money out of these banks that invest in fossil fuels, you're basically not suffocating them, but you're making your mark and obviously contributing to these banks that are going to do something much better with your money. What about in terms of return? When, like, not that anyone's getting any or much interest from banks these days, but what sort of return or risk is there in these other banks?
Yes, fantastic question, and absolutely the right question. And kind of I think how most people think about this. Once you realise there's greener banks, actually, does it stack up from a returns perspective? And the answer is it actually pays to go green. So there's green banks out there now who are top of our sort of green list. They're doing the best things possible, who have the leading interest rates in the market. There's a bank, Triodos, who have outperformed Barclays, who are the worst bank. Triodos, one of the best. Triodos have outperformed Barclays on interest rate for certain categories every single year since they've been in the UK market. So it really pays to go green. And also on the pension side, we analysed default pensions with the likes of Scottish Widows and Aviva, the really big pension providers in the UK. And we looked at their default fund, which if you're an employee and you have a pension and you haven't looked at it, it's likely to be on the default fund. And then we looked at their green alternative funds and we verified, because we have the systems to do that, we verified those green funds are genuinely green. It's not greenwashing. Those green funds have outperformed the default funds by 15% in the last 5 years. So it really pays to go green. And then in terms of safety, so all the banks that we look at, all the banks on our site that we recommend are FSCS protected, which is the same protection as that Barclays gets, which means your money is protected up to £85,000. If that bank passes, you still get that money back.
Who's that provided by?
It's
or a government thing?
Yeah, it's a government thing. So it's a financial services compensation scheme.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I'd need to look at the exact mechanics of it. My understanding is the government would underwrite, would make sure that money is still there.
Yeah.
Bank won't bust.
Yeah. And one of the things okay, first of all, now, so with the regular banks who may be investing in fossil fuels, because when you put your money in, you don't necessarily know that your money is going to go towards what do you call it? Being invested in fossil fuels, but you're taking a stance by taking the money out. In terms of how do you research these banks and how do you research the greener banks? How do you like not grade them, but how do you research them?
Yeah, so we begin by looking at the bank's own disclosures.
Yeah.
We always want to, at the very start, make sure, what is the bank saying? So we start there, and then we're looking at a series of additional sources that are publicly available. And in effect, we're triangulating. We're saying, okay, is what the bank's saying accurate, or have they missed reporting on something? And often, we're seeing with the big banks, not all of them, but with the big banks, often we're seeing they don't report on a lot of their investments. And so, okay, then we're going to look at investment platforms and what can we understand from investment platforms in terms of where those banks are investing and lending their money. So we always triangulate every single data point. So we have a data point on our system that hasn't got at least 2 and ideally 3 and more sources that say, yeah, this is within the absolute range. Where we have a data point that's a long way out, we don't use it unless we can verify it. And then also, we're working with Mike Berners-Lee's Small World Consulting. So they also make sure, what we're doing is up to standard. And I mean, he's the authority in my mind in terms of carbon footprinting. He wrote the book on it, How Bad Are Bananas? So yeah, we're delighted with that partnership as well. So we're always looking for ways to make sure this is as robust as possible.
Yeah.
We're always making sure our data's triangulated, so it's not orders of magnitude out.
Yeah. And I do like, there's a lot of interesting information on your website. And I do like the table of banks, like who's the worst and the order of their carbon footprint. It's very interesting to see that. I was like, oh, where's my bank? How bad is Halifax? So it was good to see how it all pans out. And one thing that I was actually really surprised to see, because of course I did have a look at who are these green banks and who are these green pension funds. And I did spot that there is interest being paid in these green banks, some of the green banks, but there's actually a B Corp approved pension fund in there.
Yeah.
B Corp approved. I was like, whoa, okay, they know what they're talking about. That's one to be trusted. Definitely.
Yeah, there's a couple of B Corp approved pension funds now.
Really?
Which is one called Switchfoot, who are appearing on there. I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely amazing that these people can invest ethically. They have the badge to prove it. I think it's a brilliant movement that I just want to make sure we're encouraging.
Yeah, yeah. And so if someone wanted to investigate these banks, I mean, obviously they're just public banks. You can go online, you can investigate them more, open an account, and slowly, once you build up some trust or whatever, shift your money over, and now your money is cleaner. Incredible.
Yeah, and it doesn't take that long. It's easier to switch than ever.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's like 5 working days, and all the banks on our site also are signed up to the current account switch guarantee. Probably got that acronym slightly wrong, but what that means is they'll switch all your direct debits and standing orders over. You don't have to like faff around with that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that makes life easier too then. Sorry, all you people that aren't in the UK.
There are services outside the UK that exist for this as well. Not everywhere, but there are, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I'll investigate and put some links down below. Now, besides the calculator for your money, you also have a couple of services. So the Green Living Service, can you explain what the Green Living Service is?
Yeah, absolutely. The Green Living Service is our one-to-one service where we take time to understand you in terms of your values, your budget, and your current situation. And then we scour the market for the best deals, the best providers across finance, bills, and home improvement that fit your values, that save you money and reduce carbon. And then together with you, we then enact the switch. So sometimes we can switch for you. You don't even have to lift a finger. Sometimes we do the paperwork, but you still need to complete the switch. But we save people up to 40 hours, or it's actually an average of 40 hours of work. So it's almost like a working week. We save them in a year. We save on average £3,000 in yearly savings. And our record carbon reduction is 18 tons.
Yeah,
that was hefty. But we set that service up because we realized, just knowing the carbon impact of the bank isn't necessarily enough.
Yeah.
And we live busy lives. We've got busy jobs. We want to have a social life, might have kids. Like it is a busy time. And so what we want to do is make it as easy as possible for busy people to go green and save money.
Look, you're right, that time spent in research, a lot of people are very new to this topic, and it is starting from scratch or listening to podcasts, things like that, to learn about what do I do. But to have someone actually do it for you, or at least tell you exactly, this is what your footprint is and this is how we're going to improve things and save you money, no brainer, isn't it?
That's what we think. Yeah.
And the climate challenge, now you mentioned earlier on a 30-day challenge with 30 challenges. I was thinking, God damn, that's a lot of challenge. Yeah, now there's a 5-day challenge. Is that because the 30 was just like, oh my God, it's too big and overwhelming? Or you just thought you want to make it more appealing to people just to take the first step into the challenge?
It's a great question. So what we did with the 30 challenges was we were able to understand where can people have a genuinely big impact if they only had 30 minutes a day. So we were testing different things in those 30, what really lands and what doesn't. And what we've been able to do is distill it into just 5 actions. So if we, if we only do 5 things, if we only had 30 minutes maximum a day, what would we do? And so that's what that challenge is about. It's 5 actions, 5 days. No action is more than 30 minutes. It's a community of people as well. So you go through it with, a community. So they're all having the same experience of sharing as you go. It's just, we're finding it's a really vibrant actual space. It's kind of growing organically now, which I absolutely love. Would like to see.
So it's just a Zoom call, so people from all over can just come into the cohort for that date and go along 5 days together.
Yeah, that's it. So we have a welcome call on the Monday, and then we have a Slack group where everybody joins, and then we have a kind of wrap-up call on the Friday where we share our experience.
Yeah.
And we get people from all over the world. We've had people, mostly it's the UK, just because that's where the company's based, but actually all over the world. We have people from Nigeria, from Chile, from Australia, Singapore, just all over. And it's really beautiful, actually, because you get to hear the sustainability efforts in other countries as well. And we're kind of starting to build that challenge as a much more international piece. So
with the 5 steps, the 5 days, sorry, it's not like everyone's coming together and learning about it together. So you just work at your own pace during those 5. These are the 5 things you're going to do, half an hour a day. See you on Friday.
That's it. Wow. And then in Slack, people are updating and supporting each other. But and the other thing we say is, we have busy weeks. So if you don't complete a challenge in that week, of course, if you do it later, that's absolutely fine. Like the main thing is you try it out and see if that's something for you and that fits with your lifestyle.
Yeah. Now here's the not the $64,000 question, but here's the big question. How much does all of this cost? I know the answer, but ta-da.
Yes, it's free for the Money Carbon Calculator. It's free to join the climate challenge. The Green Living Service is a paid service. So it's $497 for us to look at finance and bills, and it's $997 finance, bills, and household. We charge that because that's our time to research and to get it sort of really, really accurate for you. And it just keeps us impartial. It means we don't have to take money from providers. That service. Yeah.
So basically, you're offering this money carbon footprint calculator for free. So I've read some questions like, so how do you make money?
Yeah. So, I mean, the Green Living Service is really our main sort of place that we do make money. For the providers, so when you go through the Money Carbon Calculator, when you see the results, we do recommend green providers. Some of those green providers choose to pay us a commission. But always, we are going to stick to this. This is a rule for the company. We will not promote a commission paying provider above a greener provider on that page. That makes sense. So first. But our main revenue comes from the Green Living Service.
Yeah, great. So basically, the service that everyone wants to jump on and try out, the money calculator, is free. So let's see if we can get some results through that. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I would say we've got one other service where I'd just like to sort of which is for businesses. So when we looked at the carbon footprint of business bank accounts, it's colossal. So if you take any big, well-known sort of business, Google, Apple, Salesforce, really huge companies, and let's just take Google and Alphabet as an example. So Alphabet being Google's parent company, they have a whole bunch of cash in their bank just for kind of acquisitions and paying employees and stuff. That cash, because it's only kept in certain banks, has a carbon footprint. That carbon footprint for Google is bigger than Google's carbon footprint for their entire supply chain. So often, and this, what applies for Google applies for one person bands, right? It applies for startups as well, all the way up. And so often what we're finding, there's companies looking for the wins in terms of, moving their fleet to EV. That's great. This stuff has to happen, but actually just by getting the finance right could be the biggest impact. And so, the other thing we do, we support companies all over the world. This is a global piece. Make sure their money fits their business requirements, but also is invested in a way that reduces their carbon impact.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a bit frightening about Google. Oof.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm hoping in the next kind of year or 2 years, the big companies wake up to that fact.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we're going to start wrapping up. Is there anything else that we need to know about Mother Tree that we haven't touched on yet?
I think you've covered it all. You've done your homework. Great questions. I think, yeah. I mean, if people wanted to get in touch, they can reach me at dan@mymothertree.com.
Yep, and I'll be putting all the links below. And any questions for Dan, pop them in the comments below too, and Dan will reach out and answer them for you. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure learning about keeping the money green.
Fantastic. Deborah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been really, real fun. Thank you.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you very much, Dan. Bye. Are you ready to start on your own green path journey? Why not take a look at the Green Step program? This has been tailor-made to take you step by step down the green path. You only see one step at a time, and that's all you focus on. Before you know it, you've gone down the path. To learn more, just head to thegreenpathpodcast.com.